to Catholic Drive Time
with Joe McClane and EmilyiAlcaraz.
That's Maria Montserrat Alvardo. Are you with us this morning?
Hi, yes, how are you?
Praise be to God. It's good to have you on. Now, unfortunately, we're only going to have a few minutes with you at this point. You're the Vice President and Executive Director of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty and the host of a new EWTN show. Tell us about your show. What is your show about?
Sure, it's called EWTN News In Depth, and it's a deeper dive at all of the issues that are affecting us. I was listening to you guys talking about, the COVID relief bill and everything that's going through the halls of Congress, but also the Pope's visit to Iraq. So global issues, local issues, whatever it is that is facing the Catholic, the regular person, on the street that is faith-loving and Christ-fearing, and letting them really think about the issues and giving them the expert background that allows them to face the world confidently and bring their faith with them.
When does your show air?
It airs 8 p.m. on Fridays, and again at 1 a.m. on Saturday for the Night Owls, and then at 11 a.m. on Sunday.
Oh, wow. Praise be to God. And this is just on the television side, correct?
This is EWTN News. You can get it on the app. It's online on YouTube, and also, of course, on the EWTN Global Network.
I know families are really looking for Catholic takes on the headlines, and that's part of the reason why we do this show, Catholic Drive Time. It's very important to be able to provide context and clarity, because wouldn't you say, Maria, that the world is becoming more confusing by the day?
Yeah, these are really confusing times. They're also divided times where people are influenced much more by politics than they are by their faith. And so I feel like we are called to be Catholic first and to look at our world through that lens with, the love and compassion of Christ. And so moving through that and realizing that we don't really have a political home, even though we do align ourselves with one place or another, depending on what it is that, people's priorities are. Obviously, that becomes very clear for a lot of people, but that really shouldn't be what motivates us. And we should know that our home, is in heaven with Christ and the Blessed Mother, and that's really where our hearts should be, right?
Amen. Amen. Maria Montserrat Alvardo is our guest. We have a few minutes left with her. You're also the Vice President, Executive Director of the Becket Fund and Religious Liberty. Let's dive into that. Tell us about your work in particular there with the Becket Fund.
Sure. I've been at the Becket Fund for over a decade. It's been 12 years this month. It's
Wow.
a really exciting place to be. It's a nonprofit law firm that defends religious freedom for people of all faiths. And so that is in line with church teaching in Dignitatis Humanae, where we believe in the search for God and protecting the search from God from government intrusion. And again, free from coercion. You get to come to God the way that He designed it, through your own free will. And we have an incredible record at the Supreme Court protecting religious liberty. We've won 8 times, majority decisions. And it's just an exciting time really to be defending religious freedom, because I think people are realizing that the government doesn't have all the answers. And that's a good thing.
Who knew?
Yeah, I know, especially after a year of people saying that religious worship is not essential, when what really people needed was community to get through these tough times.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And so from a religious freedom perspective, Montserrat, what is your opinion of the recent Equality Act that has been trying to get through in the government?
2 minutes.
The Equality Act is really troubling because it guts the one defense that religious freedom believers have through Congress. Obviously, we have the First Amendment, and that's the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA. It's a bipartisan law that was passed 28 years ago. And when you think about what that means, it means that people are saying that religious believers and people of faith who are historic in this country, and the reason it was founded, don't get their day in court. And that's really sad. It's really sad. It also has a lot of provisions that are, that promote abortion with no Hyde Amendment, a little bit like the COVID bill that we just saw go through. And it also has a troubling understanding of the human person and human dignity. And so you're seeing a legislative project go through that doesn't have the same understanding of human dignity that our founders had. And so it's very troubling. And like Cardinal Dolan said on our show on EWTN News In Depth last week for the launch, it's very scary for the church.
Yeah, very scary. We're going to have to hold that there. Montserrat Alvardo has been our guest, the Vice President, Executive Director of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, and a new host for a new EWTN show covering the news. Maria, would you at all be available about another half hour from now to jump back on with us in the after show? Well, there's a lot of questions we'd love to still ask you.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to do that. Thanks.
But we do see Maria Montserrat Alvarado again on Zoom. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Sorry, I was on mute. The notorious mute button.
The notorious mute button. Praise be to God. So just to remind our audience, she's the Vice President and Executive Director of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty and brand new host of a brand new EWTN show. And what's the name of your EWTN show again?
It's called EWTN News In Depth.
In depth, praise be to God. And has it already started, or will it start soon, or what's the launch date?
It started last week. That was the inaugural show. We had Cardinal Dolan on, and we did a panel on the Equality Act and the COVID relief bill.
Yeah.
And a little bit about the Pope's trip. You know, it's really a momentous occasion. It's something that, you know, our children won't see, the Pope going to Iraq, and that two popes before Pope Francis really wanted to do. It's a promise that John Paul II made to the people of, you know, of that region, the cradle of civilization. So momentous moment for our church.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Deal.
It's huge.
I want to turn to the Equality Act, though. This also is a very big deal. And I know the bishop spoke out against it. What was Cardinal Dolan's comments in regards to the Equality Act?
You know, he had a really human response that I appreciated. He said, I'm scared of it right off the bat. It's the first thing I just asked him straight out, you know, what do you think about this bill moving through, you know, approved by the House, presented in the Senate? And he said, I'm scared of it. I'm scared of what it does to the Catholic Church, what it would do to Catholic institutions and Catholic individuals in healthcare, turning everything into a public accommodation. It's problematic. Think about religious funeral homes. A Jewish funeral home also wouldn't be able to choose to have services that align with its values. I feel like there's a lot there that America just doesn't stand for. You know, that's not why this country was founded, and it's not. It's definitely not what we want it to turn into. Yeah,
it's pretty scary because it's going to change the game. There are several pieces of legislation that I'm very concerned about from a religious liberty perspective, but just a freedom perspective in general. The Equality Act is one. Of course, the H.R. 1 and sort of revamping and federalizing all of the shenanigans we saw in the election process. That one, and then of course the gun legislations that are in the House right now in committee. This would take away Second Amendment rights. I mean, there seems to be a full force effort. Do you think it's because the Democrats that have current control of all three branches are worried about the midterms and they're trying to get as much done as they can?
Yeah, you know, it's on the religious freedom issue. I think it's really important to remember that not everyone remembers how important this right is. We haven't been teaching in schools. School curriculum doesn't really explain why religious freedom is so important and why it's a buffer between the individual person and the government. So for people who are, you know, faith-based people who have faith, that's really important. But it's also important for people who believe in nothing or claim to believe in nothing, right? Because they need people like us who are going to stand up for our faith. We're useful in quotations to them, you know, because we're not going to relent. You know, we feel called by Christ to stand up for the truth, and nothing is going to stop us from doing that. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's also really wonderful for pluralism and for the American experiment to have people like that who are standing up for our faith. So the Equality Act totally goes against that. The other legislative projects that you mentioned, yeah, I mean, I feel like they can just cram through whatever they want because they have a majority and they want to keep it. So we see that all the time. You know, both sides play that politically, and so it's something to be expected. I just think that anyone who's surprised that this stuff is getting through and being proposed without any kind of bipartisan effort is being naive.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about assisted suicide, which is another one of these issues that's a non-negotiable for Catholics. We cannot support assisted suicide. Now, in your work at the Becket Fund, where are we at as a country with assisted suicide?
Yeah, you've got a couple of states that have passed assisted suicide. So if you look at our countries to the north and to the south, I always think look at your neighbors to see where you are. Canada, with Trudeau's government, passed a full-on approval of assisted suicide. Very scary for the church, very scary for medical professionals, but even scarier for people with disabilities. And if you think about what we just went through with the coronavirus for the elderly, I mean, New York here was the bastion of not caring for the elderly. How is that it should be a foreboding. It should be something that scares people into realizing the government is not interested in upholding human life and human dignity. And we have to make sure that our laws protect that. If you look at the South, it's something that's being considered in Mexico and in Latin America. But thankfully, there are, big roots there and a lot of history that is hopefully going to stop that, the same way that, abortion efforts have been in some way stalled, or at least passed with conscience protections for the church. So it's definitely scary. It's a big deal, huge deal for religious freedom, even bigger deal for the vulnerable, for those who are disabled, those who are not accepted in society because they're born with Down syndrome or anything like that. We're watching that disappear. Something that really brings beauty and goodness to a family, having someone who teaches us how to love sacrificially. Having that disappear it's heartbreaking.
Now, to just completely shift gears here, earlier we were talking about canceling different cartoon figures, and I'm just curious because you are Mexican, right? You were born in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were talking about...
Guadalupanísima.
Viva. And so we're talking about how Speedy Gonzalez is the next character now who's being canceled. Yes, I love your reaction. No, I feel the same way.
God.
And I don't know, my parents are Mexican immigrants, and I don't think we were ever offended. We had a hamster named Speedy Gonzalez, and so this was always kind of just not an issue for my family. So I'm wondering, what's your opinion on the cancellation of these sort of ethnically stereotypical figures in cartoons?
Look, this obviously is a very personal opinion. I grew up Mexican culture and Latin American culture. If you look at, the way that our Pope is, learning a lot about an Argentine Pope, first Latino Pope, we get along, we're tough, and we make jokes, and we make what you would call heavy jokes. In Spanish, you say llevarse pesado, like you just talk to each other in a very different way, or you're not so easily offended.
Right, it's very blunt.
So, yeah, a lot of this stuff is kind of like, guys, we're exposed to so much more in our day-to-day conversations. Why are we trying to sterilize everything like we're going to be offended by it? When the richness of our culture comes from being exposed to different things and different opinions. And sometimes, stereotypes have a lot of truth to them, and trying to erase them only makes having those conversations harder. If you want an easy conversation starter about the Latino community, talk about Speedy Gonzalez. You know what I mean? Where did that come from? Why do we do that? Why do people make fun of people's accents? People forget that comedic relief was meant to do that, to be a conversation starter, to be an easy way to talk about really difficult things. So I'm really worried about cancel culture. I think that what we're doing to our kids is problematic, and it's really hard to have a conversation without fearing the other. And I think that's something we want to avoid. Fear is such a horrible thing. It has caused us to do, as human beings, insane things in our history. Anything driven from fear, anything driven from hate is bad.
Right. And I just think it's so ironic that our culture now, our society is becoming simultaneously desensitized to certain violences and overtly sexual things in our culture. It's desensitized to that, but also oversensitized to these figures of stereotypes in our culture. So it's like going extremes in two directions. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. There's this great meme that I saw of, I don't know if you guys know who Cardi B is, or if your listeners do, but she's a rapper, okay? And she had this really sexually explicit song. And you compare that, which won a bunch of awards, to canceling Dr. Seuss. And I know that they're completely different things, but free speech means more speech, not less. Free speech means choosing if you want to listen to that song. If you don't feel morally complicit when you listen to that song, that's on you. That's a choice that you make. It's a judgment that you make. And, thank God for confession. And then on the other side, you've got choices about what children can read, which are parents' choice. Parental choice is a big deal, and something that we really haven't talked about in this country in a long time, because we never thought the government would get this big. And so it's a really important conversation to have when you want to promote certain speech and promote certain sexually explicit language, and at the same time cancel discussions about race that are really important for us to have that we haven't had, which is why we had some of the issues we had this summer.
Yeah.
We got to be a little more confident about who we are as human beings and Catholics, and we're all kinds, you know?
Amen. We had a conversation with David L. Gray, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago about racism in America and some of those issues. And there was a story out that week that talked about the need for, because the effort to make people think in colorblind terms. Like there was a huge effort for years to get kids in school to just think in terms of colorblind, not see color. And there's some benefit to that, I would argue. But at the same time, who we are is part of who we are. Like our background, our culture, our people, our heritage. That is as much a part of our existence and who we are as people. And I think that, and to tie this into the immigration issue, because a minute ago you were talking about your own background as a Mexican and Hispanic people. And I think about the immigrants that try to come to our country. Right now we're seeing the greatest influx of immigrants that we have in decades. And there's tremendous upheaval at our border right now. We reported on the story today of the DHS asking for volunteers, in fact, to help. Anyway, my point is, looking at these Hispanics come to our country in particular, Hispanics are a people, as you well know, that are family-focused. They're family people, and especially the rich cultural background of many of the Hispanic peoples, whether Mexico or South America, very Catholic in their cultural identity. And you would think that coming to America would bring great value and benefit. But statistically, we see that the immigrants come to our country, they want a better world, they want a better life, especially for their kids. And I've seen this not just among Hispanics, but Asians coming to our country and even Eastern Europeans coming to our country. They bring their kids here because they want a better life, and praise God for it. But their kids turn out to be just like the rest of us, statistically. So it seems like there's a reversal here of what ought to happen. The beautiful traits of family-focused communities with their rich cultural Catholic background should be brought to the table of America, and we should benefit from that, but it seems like it's the reverse. They come here, and we make them just like the rest of us. Have you seen that at all?
Goodness. You know, you're speaking to something that I think is really important. John Paul II talked about this, and it's in a lot of the writings of our church, encounter. We don't encounter immigrants when they come to this country. We try to mold them into who we are and our cultural moment. And there are a lot of cultural forces around that. I would say that schools are a big deal. Immigrants come here, they put their children in public schools until they can afford a Catholic school, right? Because they would love to put their children in private school the way that they're used to doing in their home country. And they're willing to make the sacrifice to pay whatever they have to pay to be able to put their children in those schools, because they know that there is an ideology that comes with being in public school. No matter how good the school is, if it's the greatest school for math or science, there is a cultural ideology that comes with putting your child in public school. And that's just something that we have to, I'm a public school kid here in the United States, you know, but I came from private schools in Mexico. So it's a very different reality for us. And you're completely right. It does kind of flavor what happens to your first generation and second generation immigrants. They feel beholden to an ideology that they think gave them their education, when it's the family values. It's the reason that motivates the immigrant to move is their love of family.
But it seems like they get here and then they lose it. They become statistically just like the rest of the Americans. And that saddens me in many ways.
Yeah, it saddens me too, but it's our fault. It's our fault because we don't make it easier to promote. Our Catholic schools are fantastic, and they're a quarter of what a regular private school would cost.
And it kind of reminds me of the voucher program. What was that program that
the school vouchers?
The school vouchers that President Obama nixed because he didn't. I guess there was some lobby involved, but ultimately, when that came out, I railed against that, because I think of, like, in our own city here in Houston, all of these inner city Catholic schools that were struggling to survive, and I think of the parents that live in those neighborhoods, most of which were single family homes. Mom struggling to pay the bills, to keep food on the tables, and boy, would she ever love for her child to go to the Catholic school versus the public school, because the public school ain't good. I hate to say it out loud, but it's true. It's horrible. And she does not want her kids. It's like sending your kid to the prison yard every day. Could you imagine?
There are lawsuits in California. COVID is the ultimate equalizer, okay? This pandemic was the ultimate equalizer on schools. The schools that opened, the schools that kept their children safe were the private schools, the Catholic schools. They didn't get a penny of COVID relief, a penny, okay? It's very frustrating to see every other school shut down and to see the Catholic schools open up and not get any kind of relief from the government. I find that that's really unjust.
Yeah.
And because the families that are sending their children are exactly the kind of families you're describing. They're one-parent homes, or they are one-income homes, or there are homes that need to send their kids to school so that they can go to work because they work an hourly job.
Right.
And they understand the dignity of work, so they don't just want to be home. Okay. I think that's a really important thing that we're not cultivating and we're not talking about, and what happened to our schools while everything was shut down. When the government shut everything down, they shut down churches, absolutely, and it was heartbreaking, but they shut down schools, which is where we transmit the faith. And I think that's something that the Jewish community and the Muslim community and the Catholic community share.
Yeah.
In that our schools are just critical to us. So I know I'm harping on this, but for the immigrant reality is one that is just completely, sectioned off because of that.
Yeah, it is a sad state of affairs, and I've always advocated for immigration reform. I've always felt like there ought to be a way. We're the people who put people on the moon, for crying out loud. You'd think there'd be a way for us to reform our immigration so that we let people who are seeking a better life in and keep out criminals. I mean, it should be just that simple. I know it's complex. Trust me, I get it. But my point is, either public or either party that takes over, we never see. I mean, like, there were cages under Obama, there are cages under Trump, and there are now cages under Biden. Nothing has changed.
That's exactly right.
And it's utterly insane. And we should hope and pray for a good and humanitarian immigration reform. But that's we're gonna have to leave it there today. We're very grateful to you that you jumped back on the show so we can continue to conversate with you. Maria Montserrat Alvarado, Vice President, Executive Director of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, and brand new EWTN show host. Congratulations to you and best of luck on your program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Praise be to God. That's going to do it for Catholic Drive Time today. By the grace of God, we survived it, but only just barely, having almost not got into the building this morning, which is a lot of fun. So hopefully tomorrow it'll go just a lot easier on everyone and we get in early and we can do our jobs. But I think tomorrow, who's our guest tomorrow? I'm looking it up here.
Professor Pakaluk?
Yes. Pakaluk. Now, he's got a very interesting take on John's Gospel from a Marian perspective. So all that conversation earlier about the Holy Rosary and Our Lady, maybe tomorrow's your show. That'll be fun. So look forward to that. Professor Pakaluk. Pakaluk? How do you say it?
That sounds about right.
Pakaluk? Pakaluk?
Sounds Polish.
It does.
Let's talk about sausage instead. It'll be very tasty. All right. And plus, we'll also have David Tyson from Real Estate for Life on tomorrow as well. We're going to share with you what his service does to provide you a connection to pro-life real estate agents that will help you buy, sell your home, or whatever it is. He's going to be on to talk about that, plus other services he's launching to support the Catholic community. So all that's on tomorrow's program. We're very excited. Praise be to God for you and for all that you do for the Catholic faith, for being a part of the Catholic Drive Time family. We're so very grateful to you. Seeing all the comments, the shares, the likes. Hit the like button. Smash it, especially on YouTube, and hit the share button. That will really help us out. But until tomorrow, we're praying for you. We'll hope you'll pray for us, of course, keeping all of your intentions at heart in our Divine Mercy Chapel at 3 o'clock today and in our Rosary as a family. Until then, God love you. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us on Your Catholic Drive Time, where it is our pleasure to keep you informed and inspired.
Join us Monday through Friday at the same time, right here on your favorite Catholic radio station.
Don't forget to connect with us. Just go to facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time.
Again, that's facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time.
Be sure to share more than just us today. Share Jesus with everyone you meet.
Bye now, and God love you.